Well, as I look here at my Reactor watch, I see that it is time for Steigerwald v. Fedko, and it is brought to you by Eastern H2O. It's located in Fox Chapel Plaza. It's a performance sports store. Look at that. How many you think, huh? What time you got there? I got 6 minutes after. It's a little, I'm right on time. So we're stopping and check out the Reactor watches and other great gear. It is a great sponsor.
Beautiful.
We're glad to have them. Eastern
Beautiful
H2O.
watches. Wow.
Now, I want to ask you about this because the last Super Bowl that I enjoyed covering was the one that was played 17 years ago today in Phoenix. I went to Detroit. I didn't want to be there. I didn't like it. Hated every minute of it. But I enjoyed covering the Super Bowl and every minute of it. Every minute of it. I hated being there for all kinds of reasons. Not all of them. Not even most of them related to being in Detroit. A lot of it was just related to working for KDKA, but that's another story. What I remember a couple of different things about that, but I do remember you brought it up in the last segment before we took the break that these producers, they produce these shows for television. You know, you got to come up with it's hard. They got to fill a half hour, whatever show it is. You got to come up with some content. They for some reason. There must be some law somewhere that if you're a producer and you're producing a sports show that's a pregame show of some kind, any kind of a preview show, you have to ask the host for a prediction at the end. You can't possibly let it go by without asking him. So they asked me. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember. I hope I said it was going to be a tie. But I do remember, because we did our pregame show at KDK. You were working for Channel 11. I can remember talking to Sam Nover, your former partner there, who's there for a million years and been retired about 10 years. But he was the guy down there with you. And they asked him for a prediction, and he made the mistake of saying, "I think the Cowboys are going to win."
Yeah.
Well, the phones ran off the hook.
Major controversy.
First of all, the morons who called up couldn't figure out that he didn't say he wanted them to win. He said, "You're asking." They were the favorite by what was the point spread in that game?
It was like 9,
yeah.
wasn't it? I don't know what.
So
it
wasn't an
9.
outrageous thing to think that the Cowboys were going to win. Everybody thought they were going to win. So you remember that?
Absolutely.
Phones
I was doing the show with them.
There was no email back then to speak of. It was actually just the beginning of the internet. I was actually doing something on the internet then.
Wow. I wasn't doing something on the internet.
It was the first thing that was like very early. Mm-hmm. But so that wasn't a factor. But the phones were off the hook, right?
Yeah, it was craziness. No, it was major controversy.
They wanted him to be fired.
It was a major. Well, the fans did.
Yeah.
I don't think Channel 11 got that far, but he took a lot of flack from the fans. Were going crazy. Crazy. I mean, it was a major controversy.
And you?
I laughed about it because I picked the Steelers.
Knowing what the fans would do.
Oh, absolutely.
Being the shallow, gutless person that you are.
Look, there's no question about it.
Smart, yeah.
There's no doubt. I was a young man back then. I'm much more. You and I we're crusty old men now, so we tell it like it is. That's why this show's so good.
Right.
And by the way, these beautiful watches make me feel 20 years younger. I mean, I got to get one of these. These are spectacular. I've never looked so good in 20 years with one of these watches on. And by the way, you can get them at the Performance Sports Store.
Yeah, at the
Reactor watches is what they are. Now
they're
cool. They're really cool, like James Bond. Okay, anyway. Back then, as a young man, I remember that show because I remember that it was yesterday.
It's
as you get older,
show on a Saturday.
It was a 2-hour pregame show. We did it Saturday night. The game was on our network. We had a cast of thousands down there from Channel 11. We sent everybody. I mean, all our anchors, reporters, everybody. And I've consciously, I don't care if I thought the Cowboys were going to win by 40. I was going to pick the Steelers,
right?
Because I knew everybody was watching. That was a different era. You're talking 95. ESPN was really not as much watched as the networks. Everyone was watching us. We had a huge audience that night because it was a Channel 11 game the next day. We were the Steelers station. It was enormous, and there is no way in the world I ever would have picked the Cowboys. I was picking the Steelers to win. Even can't remember who I thought was going to win. I can't remember.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the Steelers. I don't even know if I might have couched it. See, there's a way to get around that.
That Cowboy team was a dynasty. You got to remember they had beaten the Bills 52-10 in a Super Bowl.
I think what I might have said. It's starting to come back to me now. Is that I might have said, now that I think about it, I'll take the Steelers in the 10 points. See, that gets you off the hook.
I'd say the Steelers were going to win.
Yeah, I don't remember, but
because I did not want 8,000 people calling my boss saying fire Fedko like what happened in Nova.
Right. Now,
I just wasn't going to go down that path.
This is back in the days of television, when television was still television. It was still fun to work for. I had and you had a great run of working.
It was a glory days. It's completely different now. It's
and
not
we don't
even
say
close.
that because we're old. It's a fact. If you talk to the people, they do things differently. I mean, I didn't have a roommate on the road. Right. These guys go on the road now. They drive. They got to stay in a room with a cameraman. We flew. We rented a nice big car. We stayed in the nice places. We had our own rooms. They didn't pick us to death on the expense reports. These guys, poor guys, go now. They got to drive. They got to have roommates. And I'm 45 years old. I don't want a roommate. What am I, 12? What am I, 22 in college? I don't want to be in the room with you. I don't want to be in a room with Sam Nover either.
No, it was like the glory days of Hollywood in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
That's what it was like.
Covering a Super Bowl.
When you were working for us.
How many people do you think you had there, your station?
Oh, we had on air, we had 15 to 20. Behind the scenes, it was at least 25.
Yeah, we had
at least.
The entire 5 o'clock, I think they had just started their 5 o'clock newscast. So the entire 5 o'clock staff, on-air people were there. All the anchors and several reporters. We had 25 people there.
We had 25. I'm going to guess 25. You go to a Super Bowl now, you take maybe 10, and that includes behind the scenes people.
Yeah, I bet that's stretching.
I mean, look, we saw the change that happened in Detroit.
That's when I hated it.
Oh, and the producers that were sent in Detroit were beyond belief overworked. I'm talking. They may have had nervous breakdowns. I think about it. They sent so few people but expected you to do so much. People were having daily nervous breakdowns.
Well, I'll just give you an example of
that was 10 years later. No, by that time, it had changed.
I'll give you an example. I tell you why I hated every minute of it.
In Detroit, you mean?
Yeah.
Other than the fact you were in Detroit.
Yeah.
Which is
Detroit, I wouldn't have minded that so much.
I think Detroit's a terrible city.
It just added to it. I might have been able to take it more if I'd have been able to go sit by
I like their
for a
baseball park. I like their baseball park in Detroit. It's beautiful.
So Jerome Bettis was the big story, just like Ray Lewis is the story this year. Jerome Bettis was the story. And somebody lined up his football coach, because he's from Detroit.
Right.
And somebody lined up his high school coach. And they said, I think our sports producer lined it up. And they said, you go head over and, you want to go over and do this interview with this coach and talk to, you could do the story in your sleep. It's a story with Jerome Bettis' high school coach.
Absolutely.
Nice pictures. He had brought pictures with him and everything. I go over, I sit him down, I do a nice interview with him. He's a great guy, has some great stuff to say. He brags out this scrapbook he has with pictures of Jerome when he was a, player at high school. And I come back, and the 27-year-old woman who's the producer back at the station, I call her up. I said, "What do you want to do with this piece? How long do you want it to be? When do I need to have it done? When's it going to run?" That's kind of the questions you would normally ask. She said, "Oh, just give the tape to Ken Rice. He's going to do the story." Ken Rice was anchoring out there, so that's when I said,
Yeah.
I hope they, as long as I'm here, I hope they never go to the Super Bowl again if I'm still working here.
So you didn't get credit for any of it?
No, they didn't even. I don't care about getting the credit. Right. I mean, what am I? I got some 27-year-old broad telling me that I should turn it over to. She wouldn't know a football if it hit her in the head, and she says, just give it to Ken Rice. He'll do the story. Ken didn't want to do it either. I'm the sports guy. What am I doing over here?
Oh, that stuff.
That's where that was the beginning of the direction where. Yeah. It was headed and where it is now.
I'll give you a story. Let me give you a good Detroit.
We'll do that when we come back.
Okay, I got an inside Super Bowl Detroit story that only I could do.
Well, we're not going to take a break, but I just want to say that before you get to that story, Steigerwald v. Fedko is brought to you by Eastern H2O, located in the Fox Chapel Plaza, and the Reactor. Watch us.